Okay. There's many items on the agenda, and we won't obviously cover them all. And I have my ideas, but I am curious about people's sense of priorities. One is trying to develop my model of argument, like the whole entity claim argument hierarchy, and then we can dive into negation and all that. So that's the formalization angle. And I think that's probably the most important and probably where I would go. The other is addressing the whole question of the relationship between the formal and informal bounded domains. That was kind of one unresolved issue between me and Stephen at the end of the last conversation. And I think it's pretty important because I think separating them too much. Okay, I see informal as the foundation of the formal. And I don't think formalizations should ever be exchanged without the informal component. Is that something we want to get into? I will want to get into it now, but do people feel it should be resolved first, or can we just dive into the formalization and forget about the informal underpinning for a while, which I'm happy to do. And that's really the two things I think are important.
Didn't you just argue for the opposite, that you don't think it can go without the informal?
I'm arguing it cannot go without the informal. That doesn't mean we cannot dive into the formal side. We can still dive into the formal side. But I mean, the informal side, we've been into the whole semiotic triangle. I assume I can take it for granted that you know what I mean by that, even though my justification for why it needs to be always present is a separate topic.
I'm interested in the formal side, actually.
Okay, that's one.
I was feeling that my preference was to understand Marc-Antoine's model. I'm actually kind of missing on what we mean by formal and informal, but I don't think we need a clarification on that.
You don't think we need it?
You don't?
I'm sure.
Okay.
I think we've used that term several ways. I'm not sure which way, but it doesn't matter. But whichever one gets us to understanding Marc-Antoine's kind of vision, the thing I like top down is exploring that.
Okay. So let's get through this. I think it's a useful. And by the way, the diagram is a bit lagging now, what I'm saying, but I think it's close enough that it's still useful. So but first I will start with another document. Do I want to do that? Oh yeah, there was this other document I want to have in scope. Sorry, I'll take a few seconds to. No, not this one. Yeah. Should I go into this way? No, you know what? This is not the most useful.
The question is like Bentley wants to understand the overall vision.
Yeah, no. So yeah, I think I'll get into it from this angle. Sorry, I'm thinking about how to do that most efficiently, and I think I will go from here. So we have what we're talking about all the time. We're about sharing a worldview, and part of it is sharing the formal side of the worldview. And the formal side decomposes into, I've said everything's a topic, and the topics are proxy for thought, but topics also include a few other things such as symbols and stuff. So I won't use the term topic for a little while, I'll use a term thought, but it's not the same thought as in the triangle. It's thought as in the union of three concepts. And really, I want to focus on these three concepts. Entities, like we're talking about an entity. What's an entity? Anything that we talk about. And the problem is, not a problem, but everything's an entity, but okay, anything we talk about is an entity. Let's put it this way. Claims are about entities. Like when I say the table is blue, the table is blue is a claim. The table is the entity. Blueness is an attribute, or we can say blueness is an entity if we're a Platonician. And I don't want to get into that yet, but I want to say what's the claim. The claim is the entity. The claim is about the entity. Maybe multiple entities. All tables have 4 legs. That's false, but that doesn't matter. It's a claim about a class of entities. And the class of entities is also kind of an entity. That's what I'm calling an entity. And then there's arguments, which are saying basically, if this series of claims are true or false, but modulo negation, if this series of claims are true, then we can entail that claim. And this is kind of the support. And I want to break down the notion of support in little and opposition into little sub things, but I'll do that later. But I want to say argument is a relation between claims. Claims is about entities, but also an argument is a kind of claim. When you're making an argument, you're claiming that this is a valid logical entailment. And a claim is a kind of entity because you can make claims about claims, hence, especially in arguments. Hence, when I say claims are about entities, well, if you can make claims about claims, that means claims are entities. So in my vision, claim is a kind of entity, and here I have it as thought proxy, and I sometimes confusingly use entity for entities which aren't claimed, but that's not true. Let me call all those entities, it'll be clearer. And we'll proceed with that. Oh, please, what's the problem?
At the top, you have an E.
Yeah.
Class.
There was. Thank you. So let's say, claim is a kind of entity. Argument is a kind of claim. Claim is about entities. And argument has premises and a conclusion, which are claims. So that's the base model, really. When we speak about negation, it's a logical variant with the false truth value. Now, maybe I want to distinguish logical variants, like the negation from other logical variants. There's other logical variants such as this is likely true, necessarily true, possibly true, 25% likely to be true. These are all truth variants. 23% plus or minus 4 likely to be true. The height of this table is 23 inches plus or minus 1%.
The way you describe this right now, Marc-Antoine, does it mean that you cannot model negation before having identified the entity?
No, it doesn't mean that. It does mean that, okay, and this is about the progressive formalization part. A claim is about entities, but you can say this is a claim before identifying the entities. Identifying the entities is a bonus. But arguing about whether this is a proper negation is much easier if you can say, well, it's about the same entities. So there are operations that are more secure or better backed once you've done the work of identifying entities. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. So if the claim here would be let's just say God is real, then the negation you would model as a logical variant, where the base claim is God is real and true value is what, -1 or something like that. Is that correct?
Yeah, correct. Yeah. And the logical variant is a claim. Here, there's many ways to do this, and I'm willing to entertain negotiation around that. But the notion that we have negation is another type of claim, and it's based on a base claim, and it's easier. So of course, when you say it's not the fact that God is real, you'll start it as being another claim, and then you'll say, well, actually, it's a logical variant. That may come later, right? There's always this in progress stuff. But negation is more fundamental than other logical variants, because when we use, and maybe I should model it as such, and I believe in the value of modeling it as such. But let me do this. Class negation.
Then you would, if you have two claims that are the negation of one another, you would basically have 4 instances for modeling that 2 claims and 2 logical variants.
No. I have one. The idea is to reduce.
Okay, and how do you know which one is a claim and which one is a logical variant?
That's arbitrary.
Okay.
It shouldn't matter. There are ways which make more sense to humans, but I don't think it's important for the model. As you know, we have to make a choice. Any choice is good. I won't model negation separately for now, but because I'm not sure which side of is negation a kind of logical variant? Yeah, I think I'll do it that way for now. Class negation and logical variant. It's a bit weird to do it this way because in terms of OO, you want the truth value to be in the subclass, but it's
so what are other logical variants in negation? Can you add like examples?
Modal logic, possibility, certainty, necessity. You know, if you do model probability logic, any of those other ways. Like this claim, sorry, I went through that. This claim is 25% to be true. That's a logical variant of the same claim.
Would the I forget what we call them, the adjectives, be modeled in as logical variants where some people, all people, most people. I think it's different, but I'm trying to. Yeah.
Some are the same, some are different. If you go, but I think it's fundamentally different. When you're speaking about quantifiers, that is, you know, some, most. No, I think those are different. And you get into another relationship between claims, which is that of specialization. I'll get into that.
Like I see those like numerical logical variants where you're saying like 65% probability. I see that as being in the same realm as those qualifiers. It's the same thing as like, you know, you know, it will cost $100,000 or it will cost $1 million. They're all variants on the claim, but what's varying is, you know, the amount being claimed, right?
I think those are not logical variants, but they're a kind of variant for sure. They're quantified variant, and maybe we want to model that, and I have no objection to that. Like for example, 100 and 1,000 and 1,000,000. That's a very good example. They're variants, but it's not about it's not the same claim. It's a slightly distinct claim. Like if I say all people versus most. Now, however, if I say most people, then you could have probably logical variants arguing about how many is most and getting into percentages of that. There we're getting closer to a logical variant. But if you're saying most versus all, well, it's a quantifier. Will this be contradicted by a single counterexample or not? That's a bit stronger than just, but maybe you're right. Maybe quantitative variant and quantifier variants are another kind of logical variant. It could be.
Yeah, as I understand this, Tim just wanted to say that both are variants. Both are
Both are
playing with
variants,
the
yes.
parameter.
Well, no, but I'm also trying to get a handle on like why the probability logical variant is not also it, because it goes through the same thing where you can say, no, it's only 50% probable. If something is 65% probable and then somebody argues it's 80% probable, is that arguing for or against that claim? And how does that work in with the logical variant? Because if the claim is it's exactly 65% probable, then you can argue against it by exceeding that probability.
Are you asking why logical variant is special right now?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
I'm trying to get an understanding of what makes something a logical variant as opposed to other kinds of variants. And I would understand that a logical variant is the rules under which the thing can be considered true, right? Is that more or less it?
What is a base claim is a question here as well. If you model it as having a base claim, what is a base claim? Can you give an example of a base claim, and then with a, like, what is a base claim, and then the true value is a percentage, or
yeah. This is why I'm not going into numeric variants, and I would treat them separately. Now, because for me, and this is something I did not put in the model, and it's maybe worth getting into. What I think Tim is talking about, I would call more a parametrized claim. And then there's parametric variables, right? 10% of the population. Yeah, I think, Tim, did you hear that? Because it's important that, because I'm trying to answer your question.
Yeah, I have Bluetooth headphones, so I was listening.
Excellent, excellent. So for example, if you say 10% of the population has blood type A, whatever I'm trying to find. And then you're saying, no, it's not 10%, it's 11.5, right? So that's a parameter. And then you're saying it's 11.5 plus or minus something, and it's 10% plus or minus something, and is there overlap, and blah, blah, blah. Those are distinct claims. So it's not a logical variant. It's saying we're having distinct claims. There may or may not be overlap. They're about the same thing, and that's important to know that they're about the same thing. We're arguing about the parameter value.
All people the same thing as all people? Is that the same entity?
Say that again?
In this case, where you say 10% of people have the entity is 10% of people, right?
Yeah.
So you're saying that the 10% of people is the same entity as all people?
No, I'm not saying that at all.
It's that it's about people who have diabetes, and the quantity that is being asserted is what is the parameter, and all a non-numerical one, or many a non-numerical one, can also fit into that quantity as or a number, right?
Exactly. The people would be the fixed entity. Diabetes is a fixed entity. Blood type A is what I choose as my fixed entity. Doesn't matter.
And then claim would contain like some extra parameter relating to the entity, like 10% of this entity or 20% of this entity, but the entity would be people in this case.
Yeah, and this is saying that it's 10% versus 11.5%, and again, with whatever error bars. Those are distinct claims. I mean, it should be possible to say one is true and one is false by doing appropriate sampling. So they are distinct claims about the same entities. But there's a parameter, which is another entity if you wish, which is the distinction between the two claims. How are those claims different, blah, blah, blah. Whereas I think that the 11.5% is more likely than the 10% claim. That's about speaking about the truth value. I think that the 11.5% is 50% more likely to be true than the 10% claim. That is about the truth value, the respective truth value of the claims. And this is what I mean by logical variant. I'm saying this claim about 10% and this claim about 11.5%, they're distinct claims. They're about the same, mostly the same entities except the parameter. But how I see one as more likely than the other, as more believable than the other, that's where you get into logical variant. I'm saying,
so I like, to me, I see that as being handled by scoring. You don't need a logical variant object for that. It's just that every claim has a score that each person individually chooses their score. And so
No, okay.
Whichever one they support more becomes, for them, the most probable to be true.
Scoring is one way to handle it. I think logical variant, for me, okay, scoring is one scheme of logical variance. It's not the only one. If you do model logic, for example, and you speak about necessary true, possibly true, or you do the feasibility logic, these are logic schemes. And they have their own entailment rules and consistency rules. And if you think of it as a score.
Okay, this this is a very important new concept that I've seen us new to me in terms of modeling, that I've seen us skirt across several times, and I haven't, it hasn't become a solid necessity. So this would be an awesome place for you to come up with a very concrete example of what, a place in the system where this would be needed and it couldn't be done by scoring.
Fair enough. And I will write to myself a promissory note. I'm not doing it today, but it's
okay,
a perfectly,
fine.
It's
yeah,
a
if
perfectly,
it just comes to you, say it, but you don't have to spend the rest of the time trying to come up with an example.
Yeah.
Oh.
Tim's request for alternative entailment models to justify logical
and maybe explicitly say, something that couldn't be done with scoring.
Yeah, other than negation scoring.
Okay, that's fine.
I wonder if we could take a step out of the deep dive about the logical variance and make sure I understand claim.
Sure.
This hopefully will be quick. So, like, if we have a claim, the Earth is flat, that sentence or the pieces of that sentence, where does that end up in the model? Is there a sentence on claim the Earth is flat, and it's simple? And then we have a reference that says the entity of this is Earth, or is that sentence broken up among those things?
Okay, so we have the symbol the Earth is flat, which is a symbol.
Okay.
Right, and maybe it came from a specific document, in which case it's a symbol in context. But maybe it's just a symbol without context, decontextualized symbol. The Earth is flat in abstracto. So those are the two cases. They're both symbols. And there's an interpretation that brings them to the thought proxy, the AKA topic, the equivalence class of the equivalence relation. So that's the whole other discussion about equivalence relations, which I'm taking as kind of granted here. But saying we have the Earth as flat as a claim, a thought. And all I'm saying is all these entities, they're all subclass of thought proxy, okay? So whenever we create the Earth is flat as a symbol, we implicitly create a thought proxy. And right now we don't even know what it is, but we'll probably mark in the interface somewhere, oh, this is a claim, not just any ordinary entity. It happens to be not an argument, not a non-claim entity like Earth. Earth is a non-claim entity, but it's a claim. So we'll just use the specific subclass of thought proxy, which is claim.
All right.
And at some point, we'll decompose it and formalize, saying, well, this Earth is flat is actually about the entity Earth, and then we have an entity Earth linked to the symbol Earth, and do the decomposition, and maybe flat is flat an entity or a quality. And I'm staying vague on this one, but I want to first get the entity claim argument thing.
Okay.
So
progressively you start off with let's assume decontextualized symbol, because I didn't give it a context, and then it's assumed to have a thought proxy, which is, and those are all entities in this relationship, but specific types of entities.
Yeah.
Okay.
Makes sense.
Yeah, makes sense.
Good. So and let's assume we just have negation and forget about scoring and other forms, because negation is what concerns us now. I think it's really the start of, let me just pause this stupid thing for now. Yes, thank you. Okay, what's an argument? An argument is saying, given a certain number of claims which are premises, will being true, and some of those claims may be negations, in which case some claims being true, some base claim being true and some base claim being false. But base claim being false is the same as a negation being true. So given a set of arguments being true, we will say that conclusion claim is true with perhaps with a certain percentage or a certain, and this is where logical variant can come in, right? It's so much likely to be true. But and this is where I have a logical variant here. It's saying, given this set of preconditions, the conclusion is true with this percentage. But we may forget percentage for now and just say conclusion is true. Or the conclusion is a negation of a claim, in which case the base conclusion is false. But argument, when I said it's a row in the truth table, I'm maintaining that notion for now. I'm making, this is the kind of basic argument. Here, what do I mean by entailment? And this is where it gets a bit difficult. Is it logical entailment under a formal logical regime? You know, this is the syllogism entailment. That's one case. Is it the causal entailment? If we do this, this will happen. And I'm keeping it a bit, I will get into the subclasses of that, and I haven't done a diagram for this yet, but I have started decomposing this. But there's this notion that from this follows intuitively. And then you can have what I call an argument family, which is basically filling in the rows of the truth table. Well, with a different combination of claim versus their negation, replace some claim by its negation, some negation by its base claim, and you have a different row. And then you would have a different conclusion. And that gives me an argument family, which would be the truth table of those premises.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I had to respond to somebody and I missed your last like 2 sentences, and you said exactly what I was waiting for, which is that's the argument family. So can you
yes,
repeat
okay, no problem. Yeah. Basically, you have an argument which is a bunch of claims, some of which are original claims, some of which are negations, right? There's no logical variant here. They're pure claim or negation. And the conclusion may be impure, but the premises are pure. No percentages. There may be parameters, but no percentage of likelihood. And from those, if you replace some claims by their negation or some negation by their base claim, you have a different row in the truth table. And the set of all those arguments with all those combination of rows in the truth table, that's what I call an argument family. It's the whole truth table for those premises.
Okay, I got it. Okay, thank you.
Simple. Where we get into what matters to you, which is what do we mean by support or oppose, right? Because this is where the core of the matter is. There's a lot of cases of supporting and oppose. This is where I'll get to my other document because is that legible? Should I make it bigger?
It's good.
It's good. Some of it, I don't know if it will live in the system. Okay, first thing. One key element of this is the notion of specialization. Maybe before I get into oppose, into support oppose. I can say this entity, claim, argument, is a generalization or restriction of another one, special case, general case. And that's a relation between entities. Can be a relation between entities, can be a relation between claims, can be a relation between arguments. In many cases, there is, if a relation, not all cases, but in many cases, a generalization between entities will entail a generalization between corresponding claims. And a generalization between claims will entail a generalization between arguments. I did not write that out, but it's intuitively true. If I say if I say humans are mammals, all mammals breathe and all humans breathe. So mammals are a generalization of humans. So the fact that all mammals breathe is a generalization of all humans breathe. So the generalization on the entity entails a generalization on the claim, and vice versa. And I can use that as, I had this here. And that's deduction. That's our all men are mortal, Socrates. That's our deduction case, right? We're saying, I know Socrates is mortal. Why? Because Socrates is a human and all humans are mortal. Socrates is a special case of human. We know all humans are mortal. So by specification of the general case to the specific case Socrates, I can say Socrates is also mortal because he's a special case of the human class, and we know all humans are mortal. This I'm not taking it here as a syllogism, but I'm taking it as a special case of the generalization specialization class instance relationship or class subclass relationship. It depends. So that can be used for support. You have all kinds of reasons to support something. When you make a claim or an argument, as I said claim here, but a lot of this applies to arguments, right? You can have a story that says, this is why I believe this, because this happened. Now, does it support it well is another question, because the fact that, for me, support is an argument. You're saying this claim, which may itself be an argument, I'm arguing that this supports this other claim, which may also be an argument. So supporting is an argument. Opposing is an argument. It's a relationship between, or it's a claim really. It's a relationship between two claims. So you can claim that this story supports that claim, which may be an argument. You can do it with accumulation of data. We have observed so much, we've done this sampling, and this is adequate sampling. This may itself be supported by statistical methodology in turn. So this is more the induction case. I gave the deduction case. We may have supporting mechanism. We say this situation often leads to that situation. And this is not so much logical, it's about more factual, causal reasoning. A causes B because, well, actually we know A causes C, C causes B, and we know C is present, so this is the mechanism whereby A causes B. C is the mechanism whereby A causes B. So this is very much the mechanical explanation of a causal link. That's one case. Causal link being an argument here. I should say claim or argument support with circumstantial evidence, that is abduction. Here we're saying A causes B, A causes C, C causes B, we found B, so we found A, so we think C is a likely mechanism. We're not sure, maybe something else could be the causal mechanism, but C is at least plausible as a mechanism from A to B. Could be D, for all we know. And in proper abductive reasoning, even A is implicit. A causes B, we found B, so probably But these are how we support things traditionally. Some of them are certain, some of them are heuristical, and so on. And this is why, also in logical variance, I want non-numerical, right? Probably this is true as a consequence of the argument link.
Marc-Antoine?
Yep.
Can I ask a quick question about all that?
Yep.
So in general, are you saying that we will have a way to represent that a claim supports another, and then it will have all these different ways that it supports? Or are you saying that this is the complete set, and then you'll have to choose one of these existing, these will each be different types,
I'm saying that this is a list of different types. I'm not claiming it's absolutely exhaustive. I'm still writing it down, but I think these are the main cases.
Okay, so
that's first
yeah.
to answer one part of your question. Second part of your
decomposition of AIF, because they do a lot of this stuff, right?
I know. I want to go back to AIF. I want to go back to Willard. I want to go back to all of this to make sure that I've covered a lot of cases. I'm being a bit more synthetic.
You suggested destructuring, and that's not a guarantee that it's complete, but that's what is the goal here?
The goal here is, I think, and this is to answer the second part of the question, I think in some cases it's worth distinguishing, maybe not in terms of before entry, to answer your usability question, right? Can we have a generic oppose support? Maybe in terms of progressive formalization. But I think I want to know, what does it look like when it's formalized in a way that's useful for checking entailment and checking consistency? Because that's a goal, yeah. I think. Being able to say, are these support plausible? Yeah. Are people making ridiculous logical claims? We want to know that. And I'm saying, yes, to do that, you need some level. And I'm not saying I have the right level yet. I'm working on it, and I want to work on it with you. But I am saying there is a level, probably a bit less detailed than the one in AIF and Willard.
But isn't it a bit of a paradox? Because on one hand, okay, I get the goal, but the goal presumes that it's formalized. And if it's formalized, then you can detect whether or not people are saying nonsense. But at the same time, we're saying people are saying nonsense. So these people are not going to formalize it. So these people are just going to add generic supports, if you will. So it's only by formalizing it that you can then analyze that it's maybe nonsense or inconsistent, etc.
Right. Well, I don't think it's necessarily the same person who makes the ridiculous claim and who analyzes it. This is the beauty of crowdsourcing. You can have something.
I mean,
really
in a much more informal way, somebody can make an argument, and somebody can respond to the argument by saying it's a fallacy, a certain kind of fallacy, yeah, as an opposition. It's that would, I guess, would be the same thing, but instead of saying it's a fallacy, more specifically, it would say this is an argument by abduction that blah blah blah, right? But that would be debatable too, right?
Of course. No, and exactly. If I formalize someone else's argument, the person can say, no, you misunderstood me, which is fine. But then at least I have a basis to say, okay, if this is not the right formalization, you're giving me something informal, please formalize it so we can have the conversation more formally, because right now you've given me something that is hard to understand because I drew another formalization from it. So please formalize. I have a human argument to say, please do the work of formalizing so I can reply to it more appropriately. And this is, let's be clear, I don't believe the work of formalization is never done. It's always a work in progress. I don't believe that this is the formalization and we'll get all logical conclusions from this. For me, formalization is you formalize up to a point to a certain goal so you can bring the discussion forward. And then you realize, okay, that allowed us to decide whether we're agreeing or disagreeing and why. And until somebody else comes and says, well, but this is still unclear. And then you formalize further. So for me, I don't think of formalization as absolute. it's a relative. This is more formal than that, and formal enough to go one step further. And this is one reason I don't think of, the whole conversation about can we absolutely separate the formal and informal domain. I agree they're separate domains, but for me, they're not separate because formalization is always a question of degree from the informal.
Yeah, it's a scale,
it's a scale,
not a state.
Yeah. It's.
I'm wondering
I totally agree with that, and I agree with the necessity to progressively formalize, because having worked with natural language snippets and people trying to argument in their own natural language, like, people are not formal at all in their argumentation. So, it needs to progress to a point where it's actually meaningful to be able to add con and pro claims or arguments. So I just want to say I agree.
So I don't. And yeah, sorry, Bentley. I just wanted to say, is Bentley's question answered?
Yeah, I guess. And so my proposal is, I don't think it's worth detail going through each of these, because these will be a list of both the oppositions and the supports that we're going to be growing and shrinking in the future. But if we understand the concept, then maybe we can go back and see either. I would like to see how that is represented in the diagram now that I understand that better, but that may be.
Absolutely. I just want to point out one specific bounded domain that is really, really separate. It's that of goals. I want to point that one out. I want this to happen, or this situation is good, this situation is bad. Hero position is about pure opinion. It's not about, I want this, I don't want this. There's no true or false. But it feeds on the argument aspect, because if I say A leads to B, B is good, that means that lends support to A being good, or B is bad, that lends support to A being bad. If you accept the causal link, A leads to B, or you can refute the causal link, or you can say A is intrinsically good or bad, and no matter what it leads to. Those are all possibilities. But I'm saying this is a separate bounded domain, the value judgment, from the causal links.
So, yeah, I don't buy that at all, but I know no one agrees with me. I mean, so, yeah, I don't believe there's a real thing as values. Like, people say this is kind of a core value. It's like everyone has a reason. It's either you have a reason for it or you're random. And most people wouldn't say that they're random. But so I don't know if we need to get into that whole discussion right now, but let's just kind of.
I mean, there's no values, but there are trade-offs that people have to make, right?
Yeah, and that trade-offs fall into the other two categories.
But the trade-off are based on values. I'm not sure what you mean by no values, and it seems counterintuitive to me.
Oh, it is. Yeah, it's definitely counterintuitive, because it's just like there's no distinction between a value and a claim.
I'm saying
no.
I disagree. I'm saying all values, of course, you're claiming you have this value, which may be true or a lie. You may be lying about your values. That's different. But I think, and you believe certain things to be true about the world, and you believe certain things to be good about the world, and those are distinct issues. Maybe something is true and good, true and bad, or false and...
Well, but it's either, it can be true or false, whether it is good or bad.
Yes, exactly my point, yes. They're independent, it's a separate domain, it's orthogonal.
Well, but whether it's true or bad is a claim. Saying this is good or this is bad is a claim, and then you have arguments opposing and supporting that.
And by the way, okay.
And I don't know if we need to go into this right now.
No, I think it can be wrapped up quickly. So let's actually, I think I agree totally that good and bad are not, I don't believe that there's such a thing as absolute values. I said good for you, bad for me. For good and bad is something is something I want or I don't want. Whether it's good and bad for humanity is totally debatable. But whether it's good or bad for me is something I care about. It's my motivation, it's my goals, it's my desires. And that exists independently of objective reality, right? whether whether this thing is or isn't in the
just
world.
like everything else, every other claim in the system can exist outside of objective reality.
No,
Because
in a distinct
people
way.
don't. The only reason that a value exists outside of objective reality is because people haven't been diving into the objective reasons for that. You can say that you desire something, and that is a fact, that is a claim, and you can say it is desirable, and then we can debate that claim.
Right.
But there's not a. I don't see a need for a different structure for that, because it's just how the wording is phrased, and it ends up falling into the same structure.
You
It's
can
debatable.
okay, you can debate this thing is desired by / good for person X as a claim, and then if the person, and whether the person, him or herself, makes the claim or somebody else makes the claim about them, oh, they say they want this but they actually don't, which is also a claim. So you can have the whole claim structure about desires. That's absolutely true. But the question, supposing everybody is honest about their desires, me saying this situation is good and you saying the situation is bad is a kind of separate layer where you don't debate the truth or falsehood, supposing honesty.
But isn't it just ethics? I mean, isn't it just debating for different forms of ethics? And that's why eventually all discussions lead to philosophy, because it evolves into ethics and different value opinions, and they are still objective. I mean, people have objective opinions on ethics. So I agree with Bentley there. I also don't see it as separate. Maybe Jamie can give some concrete examples she encountered while analyzing all these debates. I'm certain there must have also been some, like, what you would call value judgments as part of those debates you've broken down, no? And then
okay, what I'm saying, and maybe we should indeed table it, because of course Bentley's not wrong in that you can model it as claims, but I'm saying it's distinct because the requirement of consistency is not the same.
Yes, it's a different bounded context. We're in decision-making domain right now.
Yeah, exactly.
Are needed for decision-making.
Well, that's okay. Yeah, but that's the whole reason I'm here. It's only for decision making. So
okay,
which is good. Me too.
And by the way, me too. But I'm saying you don't align goals the same way you align beliefs. There's two very distinct processes. There's aligning beliefs and aligning goals, and they're distinct. The way you align them is totally different. That's what I'm saying.
Modeling more than aligning them, no? Like, we want to model what are the arguments that people think something is good and what are the arguments that people think something is bad. We're not trying to align. We're just trying to see all the reasons.
It's evaluation of...
No, but precisely. But the alignment on beliefs, the goal is for people having as many shared beliefs as possible. The goal of decision is not necessarily for people to have the same value. It's for people to agree in this, in as harmonious way as possible, despite possibly having shared values. I'm not trying to change, maybe I'm trying to change your values, maybe not, but it's not an absolute necessary precondition for alignment.
So
the way that.
Yes. So I agree that there are slightly different processes. I guess
that's what I'm saying.
I don't think that deserves a distinction in the model. It's just how you use the tool. But that's a debate we could have when we get to that piece.
Fair enough. And it's possible I'm wrong to model it separately.
My concern, just so I say that, is that I think that a lot of times that when you put something like that in a system or in a process, people think that they can stop exploring that, right? But so when someone says that's my values or something like that, that kind of stops the conversation, and that's the type of thing I don't want.
But okay. Good point, and that's a separate point. The point I'm making here is that you can often trace the values on the underlying beliefs, and it's worth doing that. I totally agree with you, but stopping at the surface values is not useful. It's good to know why. Oh, it's because I think this is good because it leads to that, and that is good. But we can separate analysis of whether that belief is valid whether the end goal is desirable and whether the source action is desirable. Those are three different conversations. And I want to distinguish them. And it's more, in the case of the belief, it's more important to have more or less shared alignment on the belief. And on the goals, well, it's a negotiation. You negotiate about goals, but you align beliefs.
Yeah, I think that negotiation, yeah. I just think we could model negotiation and alignment using the same model, but we can talk more.
We'll talk more. And okay, but this, okay, I get that this is a contentious point, and we'll just, I'm not saying I'm right here. Note.
And maybe I'm just triggered by the wording.
Possible.
Because I understand what you're saying about the processes are different.
You know, when Timothy makes the distinction between canonicality and scoring, right? Saying scoring, I believe this, I don't believe this. And he's saying individual scoring is different, which is individual, is different from making the claims abstract and decontextualized so they're not attached to someone's reputation. And I often push back against that, but there's a point to that. And what I'm saying is, in a way, this is the same. I'm saying what people think as good and bad is an individual score, which is distinct from what people believe as true and false. And I want to separate those two scoring mechanisms. It's pretty much all I'm saying. There's the score about truth and the score about good, and they're different scores. And I don't want them to be conflated.
But this is in your list of developing opposed support. So I'm confused whether you're still talking about that now, because if you,
I may oppose a course of action.
Suppose a very common claim like liberal democracy is the best form of government. That entails best, right?
So yeah, that's a value judgment, yes.
Yes. So how would you? So this is a common argument people have been having over the course of history.
Yep.
I want to model that. I'm doing argument modeling. I want to represent all the arguments for and against this claim. And yes, you're saying that that's not allowed, or how do you do this?
No, I'm not saying it's not allowed. I'm saying, okay, I'm saying it's not at the claim level. It's the claims. There's a layer which is the claims that liberal democracy has this and these characteristics. And there's another layer which is saying those characteristics are desirable, hence liberal democracy is desirable. And I'm saying it's a separate layer. I'm not saying it's in.
Okay. And
because it has its own entailment rules.
But so again, progressive formalization, does a user then need to go to one or the other thing depending on what they want to say, or?
I would have them have slightly different visual characteristics. Yes, I mean, you'll still have the entailment network, which is that layer still visible, but you'd have kind of another visual layer saying this is good, and these are the values of each node in the entailment network. And this is one, for example, when classic cognitive dissonance is when you say A is good, B is bad, but A entails B. Oh, cognitive dissonance, right? Or vice versa, of course. So knowing when your value judgments don't align with your beliefs, that's cognitive dissonance. And being able to have the value judgments mapped over the entailment allows you to see, you should see them together in one view, of course.
It sounds a bit like the difference between scoring and claims.
It is that's what I said. I'm saying there's two different scorings.
But okay, I don't think the fact that a difference exists means that you can't also have claims such as is good and is bad. For me, they both exist. I fully agree that yes, you also want to be able to have value judgments on top of claims. That I do it as expressing belief and whatever. There's many different ways of doing that. We've talked about it in the past. But why would that have to exclude that you can no longer add a claim, blah, blah, blah is good? I don't see why these need to be opposed.
No, and by the way, I think you are right about this in the sense that there can be claims about values, which are purely claims that way. But I'm saying there's another layer, which is here's my values and here's everybody in the group's values and here's shared values. And that's a separate layer. But claims about values are purely claims.
Okay. So that's, I'm just confused because it is in the list of developing opposed support. So I don't think we disagree then. I just understand why you mentioned it in this list.
Because it's a way that people, it's a way that people oppose an argument. They say, no, that's wrong because blah, blah, blah. And they use values. And often they will confuse statements of values and statement of facts.
It's
and
the
I
way
want
they pose a claim. It's like saying,
it could be a claim about value. It could be an argument. Like, okay, so suppose you say, suppose the argument is suppose the claim is we should do this.
Yeah,
and I'm opposing that.
We should adopt liberal democracy, yes, because
we should all wear masks, right? But forcing people to wear masks is tyranny or
that's a deontic claim. Like, let's do this. And this claim has oppositions in terms of values. And I'm saying there's two separate kinds of opposition, which is opposition of fact. Masks don't help against the pandemic. And one which is opposition of value. Masks are tyranny, and tyranny is bad. It's worse than pandemic. So that's a kind of opposition. It's an opposition of value, which I'm saying is distinct from the opposition of facts. Masks don't really help against the pandemic. The pandemic doesn't exist. Those are points of belief and fact. Those are not points of value. And I'm saying those are fundamentally different arguments, and using one against the other is a logical error.
We all using one against the other is a logical error. Do we all agree that those arguments should live in the same argument map or whatever it is, graph?
Yeah.
They should all be there together. What you're proposing is more that there should be a different way, maybe to. I don't know which things are supposed to change. Is it the view? There's a separate view you could apply on that, or does it actually change the structure of the debate over the claim that wearing masks is tyranny? Is that can that be debated using the same structure? Or is that gonna have to fit in with something else?
All I'm saying really is that there's a scoring about values which is separate from the scoring about beliefs, which should not be that controversial.
Which we'll have to see later. We'll have to, okay.
Which should not be that controversial. Saying this is good and saying this is true are two different scores.
I believe this is good versus the controversy is whether or not we need a totally separate structure. Right, which we'll have to get into, I think.
I'm not arguing for a totally separate structure. I'm arguing for a totally separate scoring, which should not be controversial.
Yeah.
I think.
It's controversial to me because I don't, I'd have to see it in practice. We'd have to see,
Okay, let's. Okay, so that's also on my homework list. But yeah, so the question is, can I express all of this with this structure, more or less? That's the question, right? And basically I need to add score about belief and score about value to this. And this is a score. A person believes this claim, this person disbelieves this claim, this person views this claim as expressing a desirable state of the world, and person views this claim as expressing an undesirable state of the world. Those are the two, the scores. And it's time. But otherwise, I'm basically claiming that all these support, oppose can be expressed as arguments between arguments with those, adding those scores. That's my general modeling claim. And this is maybe what we'll have to look into next. Is, does that make sense to you? Do you see things that you want to express that are not captured here? Really, that's the question. And
Yeah, should I say it now for discussing next time or not?
Yeah, let's.
I'm not sure where mutual exclusion relationships come into here.
Good point. I had between, I had symbol relations, equivalent, not equivalent, blah, blah, blah. And it's true that I wanted those to be mapped at the entity level. So, and I forgot to put that, so good point.
I got to go my meeting.
Sure.
Okay, thanks guys.
Bye.
Have a good weekend.
So let's, yeah, I see. Oh, there.
That's a good point to end either way, right?
What?
Some homework for you. I think that's a good point to end as well.
Yeah, I think so too. Oh, I see there was a lot in the conversation. Okay.
Yeah, the what is fact and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Related.
I'll just take that down and okay. Any other questions? Send me. Ciao.
All right. Bye.
Bye.